The Conservative hierarchy have lost their way. There is clearly no vision or spark from May, yet those around her are no better. It's all been said, but if this political party goes forward with this deal, then they will be obliterated in upcoming elections, starting with local elections next year.
You will lose the support of many Conservative MPs and millions of voters across the country.
Whether the deal is rejected or not, there is ample evidence that Theresa May has been duplicitous and misled both her cabinet and the DUP.
I could today stand here and take the Prime Minister through the list of promises and pledges that she made to this House,
as well as broken every one of her own red lines. Theresa May was a poor Home Secretary, and her term as PM is riddled with mistakes. Her talents have clearly not served the national interest to date, otherwise her deal wouldn't be so reviled and risk turning the UK into a vassal state. Your logic is flawed, and she needs to go.
Our negotiations are only about damage control.
Sir, Juliet Samuel misses the key point. The gaps in the withdrawal agreement do not mitigate the risks, but exacerbate them. The EU has insisted on the backstop, which will put Britain into the so-called temporary customs territory from which it cannot escape without the EU's consent. The gaps enable the EU to impose on Britain whatever terms it chooses: free movement of people, huge payments, compliance with whatever terms it might invent to further its interests at the expense of Britain.
We voted for Brexit. Why on earth has the Conservative Party not delivered it?
We can all see how the EU has treated Britain during these negotiations. How can anyone believe that future negotiations will be different unless we have already left and adopted World Trade Organization rules instead? More than 90% of world trade is on WTO terms, and that is where Britain's future prosperity lies.
Sir, I was disgusted by the behaviour of many MPs last Thursday.
What my right honourable friend says and what my right honourable friend does no longer match.
The Prime Minister, who has worked day and night to get a deal of some sort with the EU, was subjected to a barrage of abuse and was the only person who behaved with decency. I voted to leave the EU. I still want to leave the EU, but I'm a realist. I don't like this draft deal, but it is probably the best we can get. There are those who complain that this deal does not give us any say in future EU laws that we would be obliged to implement.
This is just about as bad as it could possibly be.
Realistically, we've had little influence since we signed the Lisbon Treaty in 2007 and agreed to qualified majority voting. When MPs have finished their grandstanding, perhaps they'd spare a thought for the thousands of people in their constituencies whose livelihoods are at stake. They too will have a vote of confidence at the next election.